Hello, Pastor Barry McLaughlin here, and welcome to another episode of 7 Minutes of Scripture. We are into episode 5, I believe this is.
6.
Episode 6. Sorry, we're not going to do another cut. Episode 6 of our Genesis study. And this is our second study in the series. If you're interested in more encouragement dealing with difficult times of life, trials, you can check out our series on James where we discuss those types of issues for the challenges of the Christian life. But in this series, we're on episode 6, talking about the book of Genesis. And I'd encourage you to catch up on the videos so far if you have not done so yet, so you can get some of the context here. We are through verses 1 and 2. Verse 1 talking about the creation from nothing. Verse 2 describing what the original earth was like. And we discussed the last 2 days why there is no gap between Genesis 1:1 and 1:2. I gave you 7 arguments and really actually mentioned some other things in addition to that as to why I think the scripture says that there is no gap. And there's no need for it between Genesis 1:1 and 1:2. Now notice what verse 3 says. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And so when we're talking about this is not some kind of metaphorical light. It has nothing to do with, like, I've heard different theories, and these are not like mainstream Christianity that would propose these types of things, not like the core of Christianity, but I've heard some people propose this is like when God created like moral light, or this is some kind of metaphorical light. There are even some Gnostics who like to say that Jesus was a created being, those types of things. We understand that Jesus Christ is God. John chapter 8, 58, Jesus says, "Before Abraham was, I am." Jesus in John chapter 1 is seen as the creator. He created everything. And in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And so Jesus was around before this. Jesus is around at the beginning and before the beginning. He is the eternal God. And so we understand that. And we've gone through Hebrews 13:8 about Jesus Christ being the same forever. And so to say that is just literally reading into the text. Gnostics, people who deny the deity of Christ or that Jesus is God, already have that bias in their head, and they read into verses like this, which is called eisegesis. Eisegesis is where you read into verses basically to support your already decided view. So they've already decided that they don't believe Jesus is God. Then they try to read into verses and use them to prove their view. Instead of the proper way is to look at a verse in its context and pull ideas out of the text. You shouldn't be reading into the text your biases. And so that's one thing with this. And when it says, then God said, "Let there be light," the idea of light, a lot of people think, well, how is there light without the sun? In fact, I've actually heard one, and I would say he's a false teacher, and that's Hugh Ross, because of some of the doctrines that he teaches. He introduces evolutionary type theory into the Bible through not necessarily molecules to apes to man, but stellar evolution, Big Bang cosmology, billions of years into the Bible. And I believe that those are false doctrines. And, and he may have changed his position on some of these things, but I've heard some of his older views where he, suggested that, Neanderthals weren't fully human and all these other types of things, which are false teachings. But if you look at the light, people like that, they propose that the sun already existed. It's just when he created the sun in day 4, somehow just the light appeared through vapor or something like that, or they try to propose these ideas, but there's just no textual evidence to support those types of things. When God made the sun on day 4, he really made the sun. He made it from non-existence to existence. It didn't exist prior to day 4. It's not like he just suddenly made it visible. No, the sun did not exist up until day 4, and that's the plain reading of the text, which is how we interpret the Bible. Verse 2, though, can you have light without sun? And that's absolutely true. Think about all the sources of light that are not emitted from the sun. And to say that is just a very silly argument. Say, well, how was there light? There was no sun. It's a very silly argument because there's lots of things that emit light. Light is not dependent on the sun to exist. It's not dependent on stars to exist. Not dependent on electricity, light bulbs, any of those types of things. light is a photon. It is emitted by sources. And so a photon is a very, very, very super small particle. I was going to say microscopic. You can't see it with a microscope. But light is essentially a photon. And there's still a lot of mysteries about light travel, those types of things. But that's what it's talking about in verse 3. And notice verse 4. And God saw the light that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. So darkness isn't necessarily a substance. We know there's dark matter that exists. We're talking about darkness. Darkness is just basically the absence of light. It's like there is no property in science called cold. Cold is just simply a lack of heat. And so it is the opposite. Evil is the opposite of good. And that's why darkness is oftentimes pictured as, a symbol of evil and those types of things. Not that in this context in verse 1, and in chapter 1, just literally means the absence of light. But God separated the light from the darkness. We understand that there was a difference between light and darkness on day 1. This is how we have a 24-hour day. You can have a 24-hour day on day 1 because what's our days primarily based off of? Not the sun. It's based on the rotation of the earth. And so on day 1, you would have had an earth that would have been rotating, and you would have a light source to separate the light and the darkness. And darkness would just simply be the absence of light. And so you would, in fact, have night and day, and you would have a first day. Now, notice verse 5. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. So the evening and the morning were the first day. So I want you to really focus on verse 5 going into tomorrow's video, because we're going to be talking about the word day and how there's a Hebrew grammatical formula that spells out what that actually means, and that we can prove that it's a 24-hour literal day. We're also going to be talking about light travel in the future. For example, how did light get from the stars to the earth so fast so that Adam could see them? And I hope you found today's study interesting. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more history. That's my other, that's my history class. Don't forget to, let's try that again. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more theology videos, Bible studies, and other things like that, and turn post notifications on so you won't miss another video from me. God bless you guys. Thanks for joining us for 7 minutes of scripture, even though it's a little more than 7 minutes. Have a good night, and we'll see you in tomorrow's video.